Welcome to the UK Travel Planning Podcast. Your host is the founder of the UK Travel Planning website, Tracy Collins. In this podcast, Tracy shares destination guides, travel tips, and itinerary ideas, as well as interviews with a variety of guests who share their knowledge and experience of UK travel to help you plan your perfect UK vacation. Join us as we explore the UK from cosmopolitan cities to quaint villages, from historic castles to beautiful islands, and from the picturesque countryside to seaside towns.
Hi and welcome to episode 61 of the UK Travel Planner podcast. In this week's episode, I chat with Lisa Olney, who in June spent 14 days exploring London and travelling around England with husband Ken. Lisa has a particular interest in Tudor history and English literature, which is reflected in their itinerary, which included destinations such as the Globe Theatre, Stratford upon Avon, Canterbury, Hampton Court Palace, Hever Castle, York and Windsor Castle. I began by asking Lisa to introduce herself and tell us where she's from and who she travelled with on this trip.
My name is Lisa Olney. I'm from New Hampshire, USA. And I went on the trip with my husband, Ken, for 2 weeks.
Yeah, so whereabouts did you go in the UK?
So we kind of did this circle around London in a way. We went and we stayed in London for a few days, and then we went to York, Stratford on Avon, down to, I think, is it Kingston, where Hampton Court is, down to Canterbury, and then back up to London.
Ah, cool. So like a circular route round. So
yeah.
Was this the first time that you'd been to the UK, Lisa?
Yes, it is. We had a trip planned since 2020 for our 10-year anniversary. And of course, 2020 happened, going.
Yep.
So, in some ways, we'd been planning this for 3 years. We had, our planes booked, and I had gotten a show at the Globe. And then everything got shut down. So, and then the following year, our basement flooded. So it just kept getting pushed back.
No.
But yeah, but I'd never been to Europe at all.
Okay. So, that's exciting. So this is your first trip to Europe as well. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So are you going to go back? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. And I've traveled, I've been to Alaska, I've been to Hawaii.
So obviously the first trip for your husband as well to Europe?
Yes. Yep.
Ah, okay. So both of you first time. Fantastic. So
yep.
Obviously if you're going to a place for the first time and you don't know anything about it, how did you decide what you wanted to see? How did you kind of go, right, those are the things we really want to do?
Yeah, so I'm a big Tudor fan, and I am a literature major, I was a literature major, and I'm a writer. Love literature. I'm actually going to be starting teaching high school this fall. So, for me, it was Tudor and literary landmarks.
Wow.
Was kind of what the heart was, because I love all things England. I just love British history. I love, British literature. So that was always been my goal. So that's how I picked things. Yep.
Have you got a favorite writer?
I do. I love the Bronte sisters.
Yep.
A lot of people, so it's like Austen, or are you more Austen or are you more Bronte? I'm kind of the Bronte sisters.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm a big Wuthering Heights. I love Wuthering Heights. That whole
yes,
yeah, it's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. I like Jane Austen as well. Nothing against Jane Austen, but
yeah.
If I had to have one, it'd be Wuthering Heights. Would always kind of win for me, I think.
Yeah. And so that actually is one of the places that did have to get cut off because it just was a little too far out of the loop, was I wanted to go to their parsonage. But next trip.
Well, you're not the only one, because I had to cut it out on my trip this year and I really want to go too. So Doug went. So Doug actually went out with it. I didn't go. So I'm going to be going in December for sure.
Oh, great.
Because he bought a ticket for, I think it's a 12-month ticket. And he's like, you absolutely have to go. And I was kept asking him all the photos he was taking, the videos, and it looked amazing. So, but I unfortunately had to come out of my trip this year. So at least he did it. But yeah, it's hard, isn't it? When you try to decide where to go, you have to take things out.
Yep.
Otherwise, it becomes a bit crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So once you decided on the different places, so I guess you did some research and had a look at where the different areas were located. That helps, isn't it? To kind of look, okay, where are they? How did you then decide how to get around to those places?
So a big part of that, we originally were going to rent a vehicle, but then we decided we really didn't want to mess with that. So when I found your podcast and I was listening all about the train information, I kind of assigned that to my husband to look up all the train information. And that's what we did. Everything was on a train. And so the way I kind of started was I knew I wanted to see something at the Globe Theater. That was my dream. And so I started with trying to find a date for the theater. And then another big thing in my research is I saw that Windsor had some I made sure I checked what time they were open and what days. And Windsor had some real strange times.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they were closed an extra couple days out of the week. So what I ended up doing was kind of like, it started with, okay, I know I'm going to the Globe to see, we actually saw Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah.
And so I know we're going here on this date. I've got to do Windsor on this date. And then from there, we just checked where we could get trains, and kind of connected the dots to all the places, and that's how we did it. Just looking a lot at your, at the train information and how to do it. So that's kind of what we did.
Did you do a tour of the Globe Theatre as well?
I did. So the funny part about that was originally when I booked the tickets in 2020, I had gotten the package where it was like we were getting the tour, we got dinner, and then you had the show. This time it looks like they changed things up a little bit. And because of that, the change or the way I had to do my itinerary, I actually did Windsor in the morning. And then we did the Globe at 7 at night.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to do the tour during the day. But towards the end of the trip, when we were kind of wrapping up, when we came back to London, it was sort of a couple days of like, what else do we want to see while we're here? And I looked it up and they had, we weren't leaving till 6:00 that night. So on the last day, I was able to go and do the tour at the Globe. I'm like, they got an opening at 10, I'm there. And it was incredible.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
How long obviously things got cancelled in 2020, so you had to wait. So you kind of already had your itinerary then, so you just had to tweak it for this time then? I guess it was just looking at things that had changed?
So I ended up, by the time we got the tickets in 2020, I had only, like I said, I only planned very little, and that just was the Globe.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. But this time it was really starting with a clean slate. And so I started I said, I'm not saying no again. I am going this year. It was around December.
Yeah.
So we started planning, around then to come in June. We were there the same time you were. And it was just like you were like, I would be in York, you were in London. It
was funny. And the weather was fun. We had great weather because the weather has not been that great since. It's basically rained from what I gather.
Wow.
Since I came back, because my mum was like, well, you were here at the right time this year again because it's rained every day. And I was like, because I wanted to stay an extra month but couldn't because my daughter was graduating, so I wasn't missing that.
Yeah.
So I came back to Australia and I was like, oh, it would have been really good to have stayed, but obviously couldn't. But it's quite a long way to come back to Australia.
Yes.
And then she was like, well, since you left, it's just rained. So I'm like, oh, well, that's all right then. I feel sorry for everybody that's there now. So I can't. I would love to apologise for the UK weather, but I can't because it's so unpredictable. You just never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, we brought the umbrellas, the raincoat, the long pants, and I never wore long pants. It was always shorts. We had one rain when we were in York. We were at a restaurant and it started pouring, and we had to run back to the inn.
Yeah.
And then like the next day it was a little kind of misty, which was fine because we were traveling on the train to Stratford on Avon.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the only, and then like at Hever, we got a little drizzle, but that was it. The whole rest of the time it was above 70, 75 degrees.
It was pretty good. So let's talk about some of the destinations that we went to and how you found. So we'll talk about. I'm going to start with Hever because I got to Hever Castle this year, which is the first time that I'd been, and I went out with John England, who is one of our partners, and I had an absolutely fantastic day. If you've got places that you've always wanted to see, and then it was amazing. Loved it. So you went to Hever. What did you think?
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. And it wasn't that crowded. We actually, and it was fun. I don't know how you got there, but we took the train from London. And so we did the whole footpath. You can take the footpath and it goes like through the back and through fields. And then you're like hanging out with sheep in the field. And we're like, are we going in the right direction? Like we're like in the middle of nowhere. But it was so much fun. And I just kept thinking like, take it in, Lisa, this is great, and it's so beautiful. I love how you can go and you can bring your own picnic. You can easily spend a whole day there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It was beautiful. They did have part of it was cordoned off because they were filming.
Oh, okay.
Something, but I don't know what it was, and they weren't actively shooting anything at that time. But part of the gardens towards where there's like a lake or pond in the back, that part was shut off.
They do a lot of weddings down there as well.
Oh, I can imagine. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But no, I loved it. And see, again, like I said, I'm the big Tudor fan. So it's like, I wanted to read every painting, everything that was there.
Yep.
And we were lucky because we got to see the Thomas Cromwell, his Book of Hours.
Yes.
So I was just in there staring. It was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal experience. I was so lucky to see that.
I think when I was there, they had Anne Boleyn's prayer book, and I should remember who else.
Yes, Catherine of Aragon's, because we just missed that.
I went out with John to Hever, which was just amazing. I had a fantastic day trip out with him. So I didn't have to worry about kind of getting from the train station, because I know I'd have to organise a taxi. So another place that you went to, which I wanted to ask you about, was Stratford upon Avon. So my mum lives not very far from Stratford.
That was actually my favorite. Like, I liked that better than York. I loved, it wasn't as busy. It has a completely different feel, but it was absolutely beautiful. I loved how you had, there's the Tudor part, but then it feels like modern in other ways. And it was just, we did the whole bit. We started in the morning and we did the, his birthplace.
Yep.
And then we got on, hop on, hop off bus tour in Stratford on Avon was awesome. If anybody goes, if you want to go out to the Anne Hathaway's cottage, unless you're an Uber person, which we're not Uber peoples, but when we found that there was that bus, it was great. Took us out there. And the narrator on there tells you all this fun folklore stuff and history of words. It was just so great. And we did that. And then we came back. We did New Place, which it was okay I felt I had to go there being, a literature major.
Yep.
But if you're not super into Shakespeare, I'd say you could skip New Place. Oh, and we did the Guildhall.
Yep.
That was a must. And then we made it over to his grave. And then at night we sat and we had drinks upon Avon. It was one of my favorite places, we stayed at the White Swan, and it was really cool because they have these character rooms.
Yeah.
And we lucked out the room. If anybody goes there, ask for it. I think it was 12th night, and it was a huge room. They call it a character room, and that was its theme. And it was a really big room. It had a couch. It had one of those big tubs, and it had air conditioning.
Oh, wow.
So, and it was weird because you knew it was it's this mix of modern convenience, but really cool rustic. So it was a lot of fun. I liked that. I enjoyed that.
That sounds amazing. And Stratford, the first time actually I ever visited Stratford, I had friends visiting, actually from Botswana. They came to visit me in the UK, and I took them down to Stratford. It was before my mum moved down that way. And we did the hop on, hop off bus. And it was brilliant because that's the best way to get out to Anne Hathaway's cottage. It was a bit further out. So it was a great way to do it. And I actually, for the first time, actually went in Anne Hathaway's house this time, because that time we just did the trip round to look at it. But I actually went this year and had a look inside. Oh, what a fantastic place to visit.
It is fantastic.
It was brilliant. And also Stratford itself is just a lovely, lovely town to walk around.
Mm-hmm.
And we I'm trying to think where we went into the actual theatre, and you can go upstairs and get a fantastic view over Stratford itself. So that's also worth doing, to get that kind of view over the whole. Is it a town or a city? I'm not quite sure. So you get that whole view. And Stratford 20 odd years ago, I think it's fairly recent. They just actually pedestrianised that main street. Before that, cars used to come down. It was crazy. Now it's so much better because you can walk it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were lucky to see Shakespeare's grave. I was there, and there was a wedding on, so we couldn't get into the church.
Oh no. This is awful and embarrassing, and and you could edit this out if you want, but we were there, and I go in, I'm all excited, and this guy's talking to me, and he's telling me about there was an organist that was practicing and telling me all about it, and I'm letting him talk because I figure anybody must just, they must love to tell you about stuff that isn't Shakespeare. You know what I mean? Like, everybody knows you're going there for Shakespeare.
Yeah.
So it's trying to be, I'm like super polite, and I happen to reach down, and I was like something, I touched my leg, and I look, well, I had gotten a bug bite or something, and I'm standing there, and I'm trying not to cover the bleeding. I'm still talking to him, and I'm like, I didn't know what to do. And so I said to my husband, I was like, I'm just letting the guy talk, and I'm nodding, and I looked at my husband, and I'm like, can you take a picture of, his grave, the bust or whatever? And he's like, yeah. And so I finally kind of managed to get out of there. And then I had to laugh because I'm out, and I had blood on my hands. I'm like, oh my, Lady Macbeth. It was just so funny.
Oh, that's brilliant. You got to bring that literary connection.
Yeah, literally, I'm like, geez, here I am, I'm bleeding at Shakespeare's grave. We laughed so hard. And these ladies were so nice, and they got me. I guess it's not a Band-Aid, it's a plastic.
Yeah,
do they call it plastic? Yeah. So she had one, and I still have one of them, and I'm gonna put it in a little frame. It just cracks me up, it's just. But it was just so funny. So that was just a real funny.
But it's brilliant because those are fantastic memories. That's what I'm saying. So you not only did you go and you saw Shakespeare's grave, but you've got a great story to go with it too.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
which is always the best part of traveling, isn't it? It's we go to see the places which we really want to see, and that's fabulous. But it's the stories that go around, and I always say it's a human interest when you meet other people and make those connections and those things that you remember.
Yes.
I think that just are so special.
Yeah.
So you talked about accommodation. The accommodation you had in Stratford, obviously you really, really liked that. Was there any other accommodation that you stayed in that you're kind of like, wow, this is amazing?
Yes. I highly recommend, I wrote it down, the Cathedral Gate Hotel in, where was I?
Canterbury?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's right outside. It's right next to the gate. It's in a great location. There's a restaurant. You look out over the square. And if you're lucky, like we were, they gave us a room where there was a view. You could see the top of the cathedral.
Wow.
And even if you don't get that room, they have this patio in between. Because one thing that I did learn, what was interesting about going to different inns and hotels in England, was how it was always a maze to get to your room. It's not like the traditional hotel where you go down and it's just door. It's you go down the hall to the left, up half a stair to the left. It was everywhere we went.
That is so true.
Yeah. And this one, there's no elevator. There's no lifts. There's, and so you've got to, and we had because we were there for 2 weeks, we didn't take a little bag. We did take a medium sized bag. But anyway, so even if you don't get a room that has a view, they have a patio, and that a rooftop patio, and that looks out up on the tops of the cathedral. So we sat out and had wine, and that this was the first time it calls itself a hotel, but really it was an inn, and they were so nice. And the lady's son was our bartender, but also checked us in. It was just the coolest experience,
Yeah.
I'd never stayed at inns or guest houses until this trip, and I knew that was a must to experience it. So
that's one thing I do, recommend: stay in the guest houses, inns, B&Bs, meet the local people. It's the best way to do it. Get the local experience.
Yeah.
I usually stay in hotels in London, but once I get out of London, I try and stay in the B&Bs, guest houses, because you just get to a taste of kind of the local environment. You can ask them as well, where's the best place for me to eat? Where's the best, what are the tips? What are the things I need to know when I'm visiting this particular place? They'll tell you all of that because they know it all. They live there. So what about, obviously you visited Canterbury Cathedral. How was that?
Beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. Like, and I think that was one of the things in my, that I put in my Facebook post, like about how I forget how many steps we said we were. And it was like, we saw, I think total counting, I mean, York's a minster, but, I think total at least like 4 or 5 cathedrals, I feel like we were in during the whole trip, but that one was just stunning. And I had to go, the connection with Canterbury Tales. And, I know it's fictional, but still, it just, and it just has so much history. And we just kept walking into these places like the Tower and Canterbury Cathedral and, Hampton Court, and just going like these walls, like you're touching a wall that's been there for, years, hundreds of years. And it's just, it blows my mind. I mean, in New England, the oldest house we have is like 200 years old. You know what I mean? Like, and so that was one of the things that really was touching about Canterbury was the history and just, and you really, each place just had this real feeling of, history and a vibration to it. Just like Westminster Abbey. I can't wait to go back and see. We decided we'd like to go back and go in like November.
Right. Yeah.
And Westminster Abbey is going to be a must to re-go to so that I can try and go not in so many crowds.
Yeah.
It was rough and we were there right when it opened, but it just didn't matter. The second like that rush went through, it was so hard.
It's always very, very busy. I'll get there in December again because I always go to West. It doesn't matter how many times I go to Westminster Abbey, and I've done so many tours around there. I always learn something new and see something new and find out something. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And this time I actually did the Queen's Jubilee galleries upstairs, which was fascinating, absolutely fantastic. I wish you'd take photos, but we're not allowed to. But gosh, that was amazing up there.
Yes, we did that. And I was going to say, highly recommend that. That was fantastic. Yeah.
You know what? I don't think a lot of people go up there, but really, seriously, you go to Westminster, you have to go up there. You absolutely have to go up there.
I was shocked. It was not even busy up there. Like compared to what we left when we went, I was like, holy moly, nobody wanted to spend, was it like an extra £10? It wasn't even that much more, you know?
Exactly. And it's absolutely, you've got to add that to your Westminster Abbey experience 100%. And it's like I don't know how many abbeys and cathedrals and ministers. It's like because I took my mum to Bath for her 80th birthday, and so I took her to the Roman baths first, and we came out, and she went, "Oh, have you got tickets to go to Bath Abbey?" And I went, "Oh, I didn't know if you wanted to go in." She went, "Oh, yes, let's queue up." So we went in. So that was another one. So it was like, okay, brilliant. I'll add that to my list. I haven't actually climbed up the tower there, but I went in where I took some nice photos. So that was really good. And something. I think that's what's special when you go into all these places, and you know the history, or you've learned about the history, you've studied about the history. Obviously, you know the Tudors. And you go and you're like walking in the same place that Anne Boleyn's walked in, or where Henry VIII has been, or all these people that you read about. And I just have I have a real thing about being able to just feel that presence in the past. You know what I mean? You can feel it there, exudes it from the walls, doesn't it?
Yes.
So if you really want to get kind of in touch with that history and feel what it's like, those are the places to go to. 100%.
100%. You said it exactly, and I feel that 100%. And especially that was one of the things I said about like going to Shakespeare. It was these people you read about and you hear about, but they're still somewhere else in your head. They're in books, they're in your head. But then when you go and you see that they are where they're buried, or where they're, where they've lived, and it just becomes so much real. Everything became so much real to me after seeing it. And it just makes me want to jump in even more. And I'm like, I want to go back and get my history degree now. I'm just like, I loved it, and learning about all the history even more. It just opened my mind in so many ways. Windsor was like that too. Like Windsor, I couldn't wait. Well, the funny part about Windsor is that I made a beeline for St. George's Chapel. And not because it's where Harry and Meghan got married, but because Henry VIII is buried in it,
Yeah.
And so when I went right there because it said sometimes it can close after 1. So I was like, I'm not messing around. I'm going there. And we were so lucky. I had no idea that we were going to be able to pay our respects to the Queen.
Oh,
To the
yes.
late Queen. I had no idea because, you see it on the TV and you like, literally, I'm like, oh, I knew that there's, underneath that's where Henry VIII would be. I didn't realize they would actually have the visible, of, I guess, their crypt.
Yes.
I had no idea. So that was a pleasant surprise that we got to do that too.
So what you obviously went to the Tower of London.
Yep, we did that. And we were, did one of the water tours. We should have got it sooner because by the time we got to it, it was already like 100 people per group going through. But that was another place we spent all day there. And one thing I am so thankful for is that originally some people had said, sure, you could probably do the Tower of London and Westminster Abbey in a day. But I'm glad that I didn't because the way you got to worry about being there at 3:00 or, whatever your time is in the afternoon. We would have felt rushed. And I'm just so grateful that we didn't do that because we spent just about all day at the Tower of London.
Sometimes it's good to give yourself that kind of flexibility. Like say if you give yourself, you've got something like the Tower of London booked in the morning, and if you've got the time in your itinerary to not have anything that you have to have booked in, that you've got to be there specifically.
Yep.
It's easier because otherwise you're watching, your clock watching the whole time, and you can, we can only spend such and such a length of time here because we need to leave.
Yep.
So it's good to have that you had that ability to stay because you can easily spend like 3-4 hours in the Tower of London. And I say that when people say,
oh yeah,
an hour, is that enough? No, it's not enough. It's definitely not enough.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky this year that I did the ceremony of the keys. And honestly, Lisa, if you get the opportunity to go back to London, I highly recommend you do it. It really made such an impression on me. Having the time with the yeoman warder, it was just 14 of us with the yeoman warder for an hour and a half. He took us into the chapel and talked about all the different things in the chapel. Obviously, you can see where, Anne Boleyn's buried. And he just told us so much of the history that I wouldn't have known. Like he said, it's difficult to do that when you've got 30,000 people through the Tower of London in a day. Even when they do those tours in the morning, they can't give you that level of detail.
Yep.
And we could ask them questions. And then we got to see the actual ceremony of the keys, which, there's no video photography, nothing is allowed. It's been going on for 700-800 years now, this ceremony. So every single night it's gone on. So you get to see something that is historic. Your name gets written in the book at Tower of London. It really was the highlight of my trip to London this year. So I know definitely would recommend next time you go back that you do that. Really,
100%. Yeah, no, that I would love that.
It was so special, so special. Really, really was. So it was good. So we're going to swivel the topic away for all the about food. Was there any particular? Anywhere that you ate that you enjoyed? I don't know if you're foodies or not, but was there anything that you ate that you enjoyed? Places you went and thought, oh, this is great.
Yeah. So we're not big foodies. We're very much pub people. And so what actually happened is when we went to Greenwich. So what we did end up doing is we did Westminster Abbey in the morning and then took a boat up to Greenwich to go. My husband's was in the Coast Guard. So we went to the Naval Museum up there.
Okay.
And we went into this pub and we went into one place. It was kind of like posh and we were like, weren't feeling the vibe. And then we went down and we found like something we were looking a little more for. And it was like what they call the Green King pub.
Yeah.
I guess. So,
yeah.
And we started to realize, that how I think that somebody had told us how like breweries own a certain amount of, pubs in and around. And anyway, so we loved it. And my husband's favorite beer, Levelhead, he fell in love with that beer. And actually my favorite was there too. I think it's the Abbott. And we had fish and chips and it was fantastic. And so we started noticing these other Green King pubs. So by the end of the day, a lot of times we just went into one that was Green King because we knew what we were going to get.
Yeah.
We knew the quality was going to be great. We knew the service was going to be good. We were never disappointed. There was one that was in London that was a little busy.
Yeah.
But other than that,
that's great.
So we kind of did that. Yeah. But we actually were able to, in York, we did a Sunday dinner, it's a famous spot. The Guy Fawkes Inn.
Yes. Oh, yes.
We had a Sunday dinner there. Yeah. So that was great. That was like a nice pub. And I just fell in love with, okay, you're going to have to help me say it. Is it halloumi fries?
Halloumi fries. Yeah. Halloumi fries.
Yeah. That was my favorite. Halloumi fries and steak pies. That's what's my favorite. And I was a little bummed because I wanted to like Yorkshire pudding, but I didn't love it, and so I was bummed because it just looks so yummy.
It is yummy. Yorkshire pudding. Have to have Yorkshire pudding. I always have Yorkshire pudding on it. If I do a roast dinner, you have to have. It's the law.
Yes. Yep.
Good. You need a lot of gravy. Lots of gravy.
Yes.
No Yorkshire puddings. Yep. It depends. I mean, I always think the smaller ones are better. Sometimes these places you go, they're trying to make these massive, huge Yorkshire puddings that are like half the size of the plate. And I think they're less tasty. So I don't know if you had really one of these huge ones. I always say go for the smaller Yorkshire puddings. They're much
right.
So really good.
Yeah.
But that's good that you kind of you did the whole pub culture and vibe and had your beer and enjoyed all of that and kind of get out. Because some of the places you go, you can order at the bar, and then other places you have to go and sit down, and then you figure out what you want. Then you can order at go and order at the bar. And there's a few more of these kind of like scan appy things where you can kind of order on your phone.
Yes, in fact, you had one of the questions you had said, like, was there something that surprised us? And we were surprised that there were no seats at the bars.
Oh.
Like in our vision was like, oh, we just want to sit up in a bar, because they were all the go up, order your food, order your drinks, and then they find your table and we're like, oh, is this COVID? They're like, no, this is how we do it. And we loved it. We loved it. Because, here in the States, they just want turn over tables. And you never feel like you can just sit there and enjoy your drink. But there, it was the best. Our food always came in a reasonable time frame. It was, I think the funniest thing that happened was that our credit cards kept alerting that we got double charged because you go up there and every time you go up, it's like 1501. And then the next time 1501. So they kept seeing it because of all the things. But we loved that. It was one of our favorite things is the way the pubs are set up out there.
The train system, obviously moving around quite a lot. How did you manage that?
Yeah, so that was when I made all the arrangements, or my husband actually made most of those. What I wasn't thinking about was that it wasn't, I would put in like, oh, York to Stratford on Avon in the, the train line app. And it's like, oh yeah. But what I didn't realize is there were like, 3 changes in between, so that we didn't quite plan for. The hardest one actually was York to Stratford on Avon because we went to Birmingham and then actually had to change a station.
Yeah.
Which we probably missed a sign that there was a walkway to it. So we kind of went a different way. But so we got around. The trains were great. We didn't have the small carry-on bags. We had like ones that were more medium.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that bad. I think the most times we got a little nervous was when we knew we had to take it on the
tube.
The tube. Thank you. Yeah, the tube. That because sometimes those would go by and you're like, where am I going to stand? That was the one time. And then the trains, there was one, and I'm trying to remember which one it was, but only the one to York were we able to put our bags on the top.
Yeah.
It didn't fit anywhere else on the other trains. We had to have it right next to us. And I wasn't sure what the attitude was when your luggage basically takes up a seat, but we tried to. There was like, I can't remember, maybe it was on the way, I think it was on the way to Canterbury, and there was one, and I realized it was so busy because it passes by where the tunnel or where the Paris line goes through. Even further down, like there's some
tell you what, today mine's got Doug would know.
Yeah, but it's on that way towards. It's only like
Ashford.
Yes. Yep. And I think that one we're like, wow, like we weren't expecting it to be so busy, but that's why. So that one we were kind of like squished a little bit with our bags, but we did it. And, we did it. And if we had gotten any bigger of a suitcase, it would not have been fun. And sometimes rolling over the cobblestones, that's another.
Yeah, that could be
one right there.
But it'd be a bit difficult. I think some European cities have actually banned wheelie suitcases because the cobblestones actually saying that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know it's one of those things when you pack your stuff and you think, okay, I know I'm going to have to be traveling by train and I'm going from A to B to C to D. So how can I minimize what I take to make it as easy as possible?
Yep.
But yeah, it is hard. And we've done obviously a lot of traveling by train, and it's trying to find on some of the trains, you can't find the room to put it above or it doesn't fit. So you've got to leave it at the end of the carriage. So I try to sit near it. And sometimes, if it's not busy, I've put the luggage kind of beside my legs.
Yep.
So it fits in. I know sometimes if it's a really busy train, they'll say, if you've got a bag on your seat, could you move it so other people can sit there? But generally they'll say that.
Yep.
But yeah, it can be a bit difficult if you've got a lot of luggage. I always say to people, try and minimize what you can if you're going to be doing that kind of that train travel aspect of it. But I'm glad you did it by train.
Yeah. No, 100%. And we studied, I studied the Facebook group, the UK travel planning Facebook group all the time on really studied on what can you fit in a small case? What can you fit in a medium? Where it goes on the train. And ultimately we just had to kind of there was just no way for 14 days. We're not the kind of traveler that can fit 14 days of stuff in the little carry-on. So that wasn't happening.
It's all right. Me neither.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, but I and especially, I was there for 3 months. I could leave some stuff at moments, but I had to keep going back. But even still, it was hard. But it's like sometimes you see people with massive, huge suitcases, and I'm like, oh no, that's not. I wouldn't want to do that. Definitely not.
No.
So I know we kind of briefly touched on it before, but was there anything else that surprised you about? Because obviously it's your first visit to Europe, first visit to the UK. Yeah. Was there anything that surprised you that you didn't expect?
I think one of the things that I wasn't prepared for were the crowds.
Right.
It was much busier than I had anticipated. And I've done the whole Disney World lines and Disney World crowds. I've been to Boston on the 4th of July, and it is crazy, but it was really crazy in London. It was, I know we're from up here, New Hampshire in the country, but I just I was a little overwhelmed at times. And actually for 14 days straight together, my husband and I did fantastic. There were a couple times where you could tell it was just hot. There were a lot of people, and you're like, I don't know where you want me to go.
It was busy.
Yeah, it was busy.
It was busy. In April, it was busy. I was in London in April, and I'd never seen it as busy. I was a bit shocked. That was just before the coronation. I was like, this is crazy. And it stayed busy. And I think it's just this, people couldn't travel, and now everybody's traveling. So all those,
yep.
and that I think it's happening in lots of kind of popular places around the world. But it did feel at one point that everybody in the world was actually in London.
I know.
It felt actually like everybody in the world was in Westminster Abbey with me, I have to tell you.
Yes, I felt the same way. Now, and the day we went to Westminster Abbey, that was the busiest we'd seen it on the streets. Now, there was the day we were there for the Trooping of the Guard.
Oh, Trooping of the
King's
Colour.
birthday.
Yeah.
Oh, Trooping of the Colour. Okay. We were there. That was the day we went to Westminster. So I don't know whether everybody got pushed out of that area and into closer to Westminster Abbey. I don't know what it was, but that one was pure chaos.
Oh, I got out of London that day. In fact, Doug was going to go because I said, oh, you could go and do the Trooping of the Colour. And I went to Paris for the day. But he said no, and he went off to the Isle of Wight for the day. I cannot imagine how busy it would have been around Westminster on the day of the Trooping of the Colour. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and we didn't know how big of a thing it would be, and it just happened to be something that I noticed when I did the itinerary, that it showed up some research. It showed up that it might have even been mentioned in one of your podcasts too. And so I was like, oh, that's their But the cool thing is as soon as we were done with Westminster, that's when we made a beeline for the boat.
Yeah.
And while we were on the boat up the Thames, we got the air show.
Oh, perfect. Wow. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was amazing. Like the poor guy on the boat, though, trying to do the tour. I don't know why he just didn't give up and be like, I'll just come back when it's done.
Yeah.
He kept going.
Oh, that's funny.
And that Uber boat, we took the Uber boat on the way back from Greenwich. That is awesome.
Yeah, the boat's
great.
Excellent. I do say to people, because, obviously everybody always thinks about the tube or catching the London buses, but, go down the Thames, you can see, you get great views of the bridges and views of London skyline and London, the buildings that you're obviously not going to see when you're walking up close to them. So, and I'm glad you went down to Greenwich. That's always a favourite of mine. I did fit in a day in Greenwich again this trip. I always go down there. The Naval Hall is my particular favourite. The Painted Hall, it's fantastic. Oh, so beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad that you managed to get down to that. That's really good.
Yeah, we didn't stand on the whole Prime Meridian because there was another line for that. And by the time we made it up the hill, it was so hot, and we were like, we must have walked over the Prime Meridian at some point around here. So we're good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You definitely would have done. So is there anything, Lisa, next time that when you plan your trip that you would do differently?
I think maybe we would like to trying to do a B&B, Airbnb.
Yeah.
As a home base.
Right. Yeah.
And but we had never done that before. And we're like, I'm not picking my first trip to Europe to mess with that. I had never done it.
Yeah.
I haven't done it in the States. We haven't done it there. So that was one thing when I read that question to my husband. That's what he said, maybe doing that. But even when we're already thinking of our next trip there, I don't even think that's going to work because there's so many things we want to see that I just don't think that's, and so maybe the other piece of advice would be just make sure, or, one thing I would do differently is just making sure I planned my train trips just a little more in mind, realizing that also means you're going to miss a half a day.
Yes. Yeah.
That don't forget, so trying to do that and maybe extending it. We were lucky. Everywhere we went, we stayed 2 nights, except, London was longer, but it was just enough to get there, do what you have to do and go.
Yeah, that's good. And you did plan the way you planned it was really good in terms of doing that circular route as well. So you got the best out of it. And also you get to see the countryside when you're on the train, which is always
nice. Yes. It was beautiful. Very beautiful.
Well, that's good. I always end with one question.
Yeah.
So what is the one tip that you would give to anybody who's planning their visit to the UK for the first time?
Okay, so be prepared for crowds. Can you tell I was a little thrown by the crowds?
Yeah.
And queues. Have patience, but book whatever you can early.
Yeah.
So I think the best thing was I was so grateful that Windsor Castle, the Tower, and, all of those places that we booked online ahead of time and didn't have to stand in the line where you didn't have tickets.
Yeah.
And pick your times. You can pick your time that you go in, the timed entry. It's not necessarily a guarantee. I would kind of let everybody know that, but at least it gives you something to go by. But yeah, I would say anything you can do online ahead of time, 100%, do.
Thanks so much, Lisa, for coming on the podcast. It was great to talk to you.
Yes, no, it was great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks once again to Lisa for joining me on this week's episode. You can find information and links to all the places Lisa mentioned in this week's show notes at uktravelplanning.com/episode 61. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to support our work, you could become a podcast sponsor from as little as $3 a month. You can find more information via the show notes and receive a shout out in a future podcast episode. That just leaves me to say for this week, happy UK travel planning.